Welcome, Roy. Thanks very much for talking to us
You're welcome.
this afternoon. How long have you lived in Mumbles? Are you a Mumbles boy from birth?
Yes, Mumbles boy from birth, although born in Fairwood Hospital, moved a couple of days later into a flat in Church Park in Mumbles, and I've lived in Mumbles all my life. And we moved up to Thistlebourne when I was 8, so Mumbles boy. That's what I'm known as, a Mumbles boy.
Oh, fabulous. So very much, you know the area really well, and you know the people, lots of people around
Yes, yeah, it's I know lots of people in Mumbles, and even my granddaughter tells me stop talking Bampa because he was always talking to somebody, but it's the way it is. You know, in Mumbles, although I went away to sea for 19 years and disappeared off the scene for a long time, I've still got lots of friends here.
Yeah.
And happy memories of Mumbles. It was a wonderful place to grow up in the 40s, 50s, and I couldn't have wished for a better childhood, really. And still friends with people now I've known since school days. It's really lovely, yeah.
So that relationship with the sea started
Yes.
very early on.
Yes, I can remember that night, actually. I was very interested anyway, because I was, my brother showed me some photographs of me driving a boat when I was about 8 years old, but that probably a bit of a dream then. But I remember the night when my father took me for a walk down to the old Coast Guard station in Mumbles.
Yeah.
And I remember exactly because I'd had a diphtheria injection that day, and my father said, swing your arm. So he swung my arm down to the Mumbles, went up to the Coast Guard station. A friend of his was on duty there, and I watched the ships going out to Swansea Dock, and the man telling me they were bound for Canada or France. I thought, look at them now in the seas. How are they ever going to get to Canada? And I think from that day on, I was just determined to go to sea.
Okay.
Much to my mother's disgust. She tried everything to stop me going to sea. And I did go to sea when I was 16 then.
So there must be lots of stories that jump into your head as you talk about your time.
Yes. Some good, some bad, but yeah.
Are there any that you'd like to tell us about today?
About at sea?
Yeah. Any particular memories?
Well, there's sad memories when you lose a crewman overboard on a ship. And on one ship I was on, we had 3 deaths in about 4 months. And another one was when I found a Japanese dock worker dead in the bottom of the hold. And I was only a young cadet at the time. And what happened, we discharged cargo and then we set sail for Brisbane, Australia.
Yeah.
And it was Good Friday, and the chief officer said, you were called by his surname, you weren't called by, because Griffiths, go down and do this. So I went down the hold on my own with a big spanner in my hand, 40 foot of ladder with a portable light, and there's this body lying at the bottom of the hold. So I shot back up like a Polaris missile out. I told the chief officer what happened. He called the captain. The captain said to me, did you hit him, Griffiths? And I was stood there with a spanner. I said, no, sir, I didn't hit him. So anyway, we got down there, pulled the body up, and he had a dent in his head. And then the company then radioed back to Japan and told them the situation. They came back, bury him at sea,
Right.
wash the body, cut the hair, and save the hair. It's a Shinto thing, apparently.
Right.
Keep the hair and send it back there. So the captain, the chief officer said, well, you found him, Griffiths, you do it.
Wow.
So me and the other 3 cadets then washed his body, cut his hair, wrapped him up in canvas and some heavy metal weights, and put the body into the sea.
And how old were you? You said you were very young.
I was 17.
17.
Enough to deal with that age.
Yeah. You always remember it.
Yeah. And do you talk about it then afterwards?
No.
Just get on with that.
The funny thing is that when we got to Brisbane then, about 14 days later, the police came on board and cautioned me under caution because I was the one who found the body.
Wow, okay.
And when the ship came back 17, 18 months later, the ship was called the Silverback and went away a long trip. We came into Glasgow and the same thing happened. Because we're a British registered ship, British flag, and it happened on British soil. First people aboard the CID in Glasgow questioning me under caution about what happened.
They don't know. So, I mean, that's my question. What did happen? A head wound?
Well, he had these like very thin DAP shoes on, and we think he fell. We think
okay.
he probably fell.
Okay.
But because he was at the bottom of the ladder, so I think he probably slipped. But as you say, we don't know.
So, as you reflect on your time, I'm thinking about a story in particular that jumps out, largely because we also have some things to look at here today, and that's the lifeboat disaster in 1947.
Yes.
So, would you like to share?
Yeah.
share
Well,
that story with us?
I do remember it because I was
Yeah.
5.5,
Yeah.
and I remember my mother crying, and I suppose at the time I couldn't understand why she would cry, but of course she knew these people. My father was away in Canada during the war for 3 years, and so my mother was single mother with me, and she met other lifeboat wives, and she knew the coxswain
Right.
and his wife, and I remember seeing the newspaper coming through the door, and the picture of the upturned lifeboat. And I remember the funeral, vividly remember the funeral. I remember where I was stood for the funeral,
Okay.
tipping over rain. The crowds were out there, and the choir in their robes. And when I joined the choir in Iceland Church a couple of years later, the books were still damaged through the rain. And the hymn books were all, you could see they got soaked.
Wow.
And it lasted me for a long time. And of course, it's always been a thing in Mumbles, 1947 disaster. Every year we put the flag at half-mast, and every 10th year or 50th, whatever, we have a big do in the church. We've had a few royal visits, mostly the Duke of Kent, because he's the president of the RNLI. So yes, it's a big scar, big thing in the Mumbles history. Yeah.
And how it affected such a small community.
Oh, it was terrible at the time. Yeah, I mean, it was a really small community, and it was the biggest maritime disaster,
Yeah.
well, if ever in these waters.
So what were the 47?
47 crews, 39 on the ship,
Right.
and 8 lifeboat crews. That's 47 crew, 47 people in the space of a couple of hours. A terrible storm.
Yeah.
Terrible storm.
So it was a particularly rough.
It was a bad year because in the winter it had a lot of snow and cold weather, and then it suddenly changed in February, March, April, and there were warnings about this because the circulation of the sea and suddenly going from cold to warm, it causes deep depressions, and it was forecast, but they never thought it would reach, say, 100 mile an hour winds like this, and you never thought it would happen. I mean, these ships were in the North Atlantic throughout the war. They survived the war, and then in peacetime, then this happens. So I think everybody was in a bit of euphoria of getting over the war, and then suddenly a disaster like this. So I think that's what made it harder.
Brings to mind the lifeboat disaster we talk about with Paul Tynan.
Yeah.
And there being people who were on leave from the First World War on that boat.
Yeah.
And the loss of life there,
Yes.
and then they decided obviously that to sort of disband the lifeboat for a time after that disaster, because there was so much loss of life in the war, in the context of the war.
Yes.
It must have just hit the community.
But we were lucky in
so
Mumbles.
hard.
Yeah, we were lucky in Mumbles. There was a crew ready to step in.
Yeah.
And that was the incredible thing. The men were there to go back straight away. No matter what happened, they were going to keep it alive here.
What was they thinking on their first call to the new crew to have to go out?
I know. Well, this is the bravery. And of course, the lifeboat, in terms of design, has changed dramatically. We're not rowing out to sea anymore.
No.
And so maybe the risks are lessened to an extent because of the... But the risks are still there, aren't they?
Of course, they're still there, yeah.
So how do you feel when you go out, on a call?
Well, I was on the crew for 10 years. I didn't join the lifeboat crew when I was young because I went away to sea. But lots of my pals did, and quite a few of them are still alive. But it was a thing to go down there Sunday morning and join the crew and do the brass, do the dirty work, and eventually got accepted into the crew. So it's after my seagoing career when I became a pilot in Swansea and Port Talbot, and later harbour master at Neath River and pilot there. I got involved, and I started off by helping to do training for the crew of the Coast Guard, teaching them navigation and stuff like that, because it was very basic what they were doing. And then they were bringing new stuff in like radar and different types of navigation, which I was used to at sea, and these lads weren't, because they were all volunteers. So we started like a weekly class club up the Coast Guard station, lovely facilities up there. So I started teaching navigation and radar work and communications. And then the boats became, from the slow Watson class, like 9 knots or 11 mile an hour, to the fast time class boats. Self-righting, enclosed, safer, different cuttle of fish, because one you're moving at 9 mile an hour, and next thing you're moving at 25 mile an hour. You've got to think faster and you've got to be trained better. So that's how I started. And then I joined the crew, and I was 10.5 years in the crew, and then I became Lifeboat Operations Manager. Or it was called Honorary Secretary, which I took over, and then it became Lifeboat Operations Manager in 1988.
Roy, tell us a bit about the story then with these photographs that you've got.
Well, it was in 1992 on a Sunday morning when we were doing our usual maintenance work on the lifeboat, and we used to go down to the brass, and I was like the lifeboat operations manager, and one of the crew said to me, Roy, there's a lady here would like to meet you. So I went up, and this is how I met this lady, and her name is Irene Richmond. But then she shocked me by saying, pleased to meet me, etc. And she gave me all these documents, and she said, I am the widow of the Chief Officer of the Sam Tampa. Well, that was
How did you feel when you heard those words?
gobsmacked, absolutely
stunned. The Sam Tampa was...
And then when she started showing me these things, it was just so emotional,
And it's the boat, of course, that was in the lifeboat we're going to rescue.
And there she is.
Which one's she, Roy?
That's,
Are you on there as well?
I'm there, looking younger. Yeah, I'd be to see that, Jonas. And that's the Alan Jones, the mechanic, the coxswain, and Malcolm Cross, the mechanic.
You can see by your faces and his in particular that's a very poignant moment.
It was, and I think Trudy and Prosser looked as stunned as I was.
Yeah.
But she was such a lovely lady, and she showed me that for a start. But sorry, we took that for a start. But what she was holding in her hand was this is the thing that really got me more than anything. It's this. When you go to sea as a deck cadet or whatever you train, to be a captain, this is what your aim is. You aim to get your master's foreign going certificate. That is the highest thing you can get to command any ship, anywhere in the world. You can do a degree after that, which is the extra masters, but that is the one.
Yeah.
That is the one, the Master Matters foreign going certificate.
Yeah. What's this?
And then, when she opened it up and showed me, I've got one of these at home. I should have brought it down. And they've changed it now. It's now called a Deck Officer Certificate Class 1. But this was Master Mariner. That meant you were a Master Mariner anywhere in the world, any size ship, Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, to the smaller ship. You entitled to command it if you involved. But then, when she said this was found on his body, you can feel the sand where his body must have been rolled around on the rocks.
So that was actually found with him.
Yeah.
He was rediscovered.
Yeah. And for her to give these to me is just incredible. Also on his body, every officer had a crew list of their lifeboat. So if they had 4 lifeboats, 4 officers would have. So that there was a crew of 40 on that ship, 39 at the day because one went off sick. But his boat was the one, number 1, number 2, and you just see bits of it. Donald Lowe, chief officer he was, and then he had the carpenter, Jackson the carpenter, and he had AB, a fireman, assistant steward, greaser, senior ordinary seaman, donkey man, fire watch, second engineer, and a young apprentice, 17-year-old apprentice.
Oh, bless, and all of these people perished.
So how many
On
are
his
on
boat.
that list?
Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 11 on that list.
Did you
So
say
the 4
it was
lifeboats, yeah. Could be 4 lifeboats.
Yeah, okay.
You're supposed to have enough on one side of the ship to accommodate everybody. So if a ship goes over,
I see.
everybody should get in at least one
Right,
side of the
I
lifeboat.
understand. Right.
But that was
Okay.
his.
That
That's
was,
the one he had to count
that was
for.
the one he had to
Yeah.
count for. Okay.
There's the keys to the first mate's cabin. So there's his cabin keys and maybe other keys to lockers and things like that. All found on his body.
Yeah.
And then the whistle, which is a very important thing to have on a ship because if you're in the water, you'd use the whistle to attract attention. And there's famous bottle opener to open the
Disgust me.
bottle of your
I
choice.
was gonna say, I'm tearing up. I cannot imagine how
It's
you must have been
quite,
when the widow handed
yeah.
these over.
So we used to meet her off the bus then in Swansea and bring her, but she wouldn't want to stay with us, she wanted to go to, so we used to put her in a guest house in Log South End, one of the guest houses, look after her, and we'd take her for a meal, and then we'd take her up to Porthcawl, and we'd take her to the cemetery and leave her by the graveside, and we'd go up somewhere and come back and pick her up. There was one lifeboat widow still alive, Eileen Thomas. How lovely it would be for them to meet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we asked Eileen to come down specially for this official opening of the new Winchell acquisition. And they didn't know anything about it. And it's a lovely sunny day, and we had them out, not like this. We had them out there, and we sat them next to each other, but they didn't know until we told them. How about that, Danny?
Oh, really? It's giving me chills already.
It was really wonderful.
Wow.
Oh.
I was the Lifeboat operation man for 21 years. I'm now the president of the station now, but Lifeboat office manager's job is to authorise the launch of the boat. And God forbid ever to make that wrong decision. I mean, no the lifeboat will go out any weather, but you know, it's some nights you think you send them out to be safe, or you send them out to a certain not nice. But now the training is superb with the crews. The college in Poole, you know, you wouldn't get better training anywhere in the world than they get it now. So it's a lot safer, hopefully. But the sea, you never know.
No fickle friend.
You never know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pleasure.